The Searching Sword by Alex McCall. Art by Salem Newman. Who am I? Wish I knew, but for the moment I'm going by Serafina. I started life not as the woman you see before you, but as a sword, a consciousness gradually awakening over time. I don't know how common that is, a sword awakening. We're not a chatty lot, the only time we talk is when we meet in combat. But then, we sing. I had a wielder back then, a man named Eric. He would talk to me and appreciate me, even when I couldn't talk back. I grew to love him, his firm hand on my hilt and the sure way he swung me. And once I could communicate with him, he came to love me back. I think. Because suddenly he started talking about me having a body. A human one, not my sword self. I thought what we had was personal, two beings working in concert, but it somehow wasn't enough for him. He wanted me to give that up, to stop being a sword, to become something else. I wasn't sure. I was happy as I was, but I also loved him. If that was what he wanted, maybe changing myself wouldn't be so bad. I didn't even understand how it would be possible, but Eric was always capable of getting his way. There was a wizard at that time in the West. Eric heard about him and took me to him, asking him to make a body for me. I wasn't as aware of my surroundings when I was a sword. I could feel anything that touched me, and I could talk to my holder, but that was it. So when I was suddenly handed to someone else and another voice talked to me, it was a shock. "Are you sure you want me to make your body a different form than this one?" the wizard asked me. And I replied, "I want my wielder to be happy. This is what he wants." With those words, I sealed my fate. The work on my body went quickly. Barely a month later, I was again in the wizard's hands, passing over my new vessel. I didn't really have much of an opinion on it. Who was I to judge a body when I'd never had one? One final time he asked me, "Are you sure you want to do this?" "I'm sure," I told him, like a fool. "I want to do this." Then I was inserted, and there was pain. I don't think humans realize just how much the world is. I had senses now, and they were bombarded, all of them. There was smell, first of all, a completely alien sensation, telling me all about what was around me whether I wanted it to or not. I had a mouth, and it was filled with copper. Unfocused light blazed through my eyes, and thunder pounded through my ears. The silk of my clothing grated upon my skin, and the table was rough and solid beneath me, gravity pressed me down into it. And then something I recognized. A hand in mine, one I knew intimately. Eric. I focused on that, letting it be my anchor. Slowly, the confusion of the universe died down, became manageable. I was able to focus on him, and see his face for the first time. It was handsome, I suppose, symmetrical and all that, but it wasn't as important as his hand in mine. He helped me to my feet, and we went outside. Gods, the light inside had been dim, and started down the hill. I could see that we'd been inside a lighthouse in the middle of a forest, but I didn't think to question it. I was too busy taking it all in, the colours of the trees, the sounds of the wind through the leaves, the 5 men with clubs who suddenly blocked our path. My wielder had been an amazing swordsman, killing many people in duels or less dignified fights. But now he was without a sword. I was trapped inside this useless body, and the loved ones of some that he had killed had caught up with him. He tried to talk his way out of it. It didn't work. I don't want to talk about what happened next. I can barely remember it, just a blur of emotions, fear, pain, sorrow. I came back to myself, kneeling beside Eric's still body as the wizard found me. He didn't say anything, just helped me to my feet and back to the lighthouse. The wizard buried Eric where he fell, sheathing him in the earth. He would take me out to see him once a day, and I'd just sit numbly beside the grave for hours at a time. Everything was too much, the sensations without and the emotions within. I was a doll, not needing any sustenance. I would probably have just sat slumped by the grave for the rest of time, if not for the wizard. He encouraged me to get up each day, to practice moving, to practice being. I still found walking hard, and sensations still overwhelmed me, but he helped me work through it. Apart from the time I spent by the grave, he would talk to me, in low murmurs to begin with, so I wouldn't get overstimulated. He set me at a table and had me chop vegetables and cut meat for meals, while he sat across from me and worked on other tasks. It helped with my dexterity, and slowly I got better. The textures of the food was harder to get used to in some ways. The sliminess of the meat, the rigidness of the carrot that echoed with a crack when it was cut. And yet slowly I began to notice it less, to dial down the loudness of the world. But every day was hard. "Can I go back?" I asked the wizard at one point. "I just want to be a sword again." He sat down with me and, very gently, explained that my soul was now split between the sword in the sheath on my back and the rest of my body. He talked about coefficients and balanced harmonies and a lot of other things I didn't understand. All I got out of it was that I was trapped. This was who I was now. I had to find something to motivate me, and I went traditional. Revenge. The day I decided to hunt down those who had killed Eric stayed sharp in my mind. It wasn't anything personal to them, though I'm sure it would have felt that way, but it gave me a reason to pick myself up whenever I fell. It was also the day that I changed out of my clothes for the first time. I'd been wearing the same silken dress since I'd got this body, and it was beginning to get in the way. It tugged and slid over my skin in uncomfortable ways, binding my legs if I moved wrong. The wizard dragged out some simple homespun clothes and apologized that he didn't have anything finer. "I have some blue dye," he said. "I could pretty them up a bit." I hesitated. I didn't really care about the clothes, but it had given me an idea. "My hair is made of silk," I said to him. "Could you dye that blue instead?" He looked at me. I'm not very good at reading body language, but I'm fairly sure he was thinking it was a terrible idea. But then he smiled. "Of course. Just let me get it set up." I hadn't chosen anything about my body, not really. Not what I looked like, or even if I wanted to be a woman. But I chose this. And, standing in front of a mirror in my new clothes and my sky blue hair, I felt just a little bit more comfortable in myself. I worked hard, and soon I was able to focus through the distractions and talk about the lighthouse. I no longer needed the wizard to take me out to the grave, but I also didn't spend as much time there. I had a purpose and would not be distracted. I learned to walk, and then I learned to run. It wasn't easy. I fell a lot and acquired some dents in my face from hateful roots. But I did it. It wasn't enough. The wizard looked at me strangely when I asked for the sword, but he didn't ask questions. By then I was able to move easily, steady on my feet. I could run, skip, climb the stairs, and I'd taken over cooking. But that wouldn't do me any good when I found those murderers. I needed to fight. The first thing I learned was that swords are not naturally graceful. I suppose I was lucky. Eric was a master, and in his hands I swam through the air. With me, my sword flopped like a stranded fish. It was heavy and unbalanced, wavering when it should have been steady. It was like trying to learn to walk again. And just like then, persistence was the key. I practiced day after day, how to stand, how to hold it, how to attack. I was lucky. I suppose I had learned something from being wielded by Eric, because there was a feeling of rightness when I did something correctly. It came rarely at first, but I focused on it, and it started coming more and more often, until I could move, and it would seem like my sword and I were one. And every time I sheathed it, I thanked it for its work. I don't know if it was like me, unconscious, but it never hurt to be polite. It took 1.5 years before I was happy with my movements, and that I could properly complete my mission. Well, I was confident I could kill the men when I found them. Finding them might be a problem. I am face-blind and find it hard to tell humans apart, but I was sure I'd be able to do it. I had all the time in the world. I was just getting ready to leave when the boy came. To be more exact, I was in the middle of leaving. I had learned long ago why the wizard lived in a lighthouse. It was a port for sky ships, some far-flung outpost of a trading empire where they could refuel or repair. They came on schedule, and one night, when the latest one was due, I slipped out and away. It felt wrong to sneak away like a thief, especially after all the wizard had done for me, but I didn't like the idea of saying goodbye. The trees were closing in around me when the skyship floated by overhead. As usual, it appeared with a suddenness that was disconcerting, but I had gotten used to it. Not everyone got the chance. I had a harsh whinny, and then the shattering of branches and something crashed away, followed by a final sounding thump. Curious, despite myself, I went to investigate. There lay a boy, collapsed like a marionette with its strings cut. I thought for a moment he could see me, but that must have been the moonlight glinting off his eyeballs. There was no sign of the horse. It must have bolted, throwing its rider. I stared at him for a while, thinking. No one would know I had been there. I could go off on my quest and leave him here. The wizard might find him in the morning, or he could regain consciousness and walk himself there. There was nothing tying me here. Eric wouldn't have hesitated, but I am not my old wielder. I gathered him up and brought him back to the tower. I could always leave later. The wizard fussed around him, asking me to put him in the bed that was left on the ground floor for visitors. I carefully laid him down, then stepped back. It was a few hours before the boy woke up, and I learned that, no, he wouldn't have walked here in the morning. He couldn't walk at all. That's why he had come, seeking help from the wizard. The wizard offered to let him stay here while he made the boy a wheelchair, while I thought over this revelation. He would have died, alone and unnoticed in the forest, if I had followed my impulse and left. Just like Eric. Then the wizard said my name, and I looked up to see him beckoning me over. As I walked to the bed, he told the boy, "She was the one who found you." The boy gaped up at me, gratitude that I didn't deserve in his face, I think. Thank you," he stammered. It was too much. I laughed. The wizard found me a bit later, kneeling by Eric's grave. "I know you were planning on leaving," he started in his no-nonsense manner, "and obviously I can't stop you. But I'd like to ask you to stay for a bit. I might need help with the boy, and you're stronger than I am. Please?" I thought about it, remembering that moment when I was just going to leave him there. To die. "I'll stay if he needs me," I told the wizard, "but I don't know what help I'll be." He nodded and went back inside. I stayed where I was until the sun rose. Then I got up and followed. The boy's name turned out to be Malcolm. He was good at whittling, attentive while the wizard showed him how he was putting together his wheelchair, and terrible at cooking. The first time he tried, he filled the room with smoke and started a fire that I had to put out. After that, I agreed to teach him what I knew and, like when I started, I put him to preparing vegetables. I would stand cooking, watching his nimble fingers cutting carrots, or lean against the wall while he talked to me and carved wooden figurines. His hands were fascinating to me, always moving or busy, always expressive. He would pause what he was doing to make a joke, or start carving extra carefully when he was angry. I was able to lead him much better than anyone else. He almost reminded me of Eric. Not that they were anything alike really, but I had connected with him through his hands as well. After the month, the chair was completed, and I started getting ready to once again leave. I thought that Malcolm would go home, and there'd be nothing tying me here anymore. I still had my mission. I was going to avenge my wielder. Then, the wizard said that Malcolm still had to learn how to use the chair, and, though he didn't say it, that I had to stay. And I did. I had vowed, after all, to stay as long as he needed me. And I tried to ignore the little voice in my head, calling me a traitor for being so happy about that. Working with Malcolm was hard. I decided to train him. After all, I'd also had to learn a new way of moving, but I wasn't a particularly good teacher, and he wasn't a good student. He fell to the floor, and I'd pick him up, again and again and again, until he'd get angry. But he always apologized, which I wasn't expecting, and used that anger to work twice as hard. Soon, he was able to get himself in and out of the chair with ease, and glide across the floor smoothly and without hesitation. One night, I was watching him wheel around, and I don't know what came over me, but I stepped forward and asked, "Want to dance?" He looked surprised to be asked, but I stretched out my hand to him, and he took it. His fingers were sure and covered in calluses, though in different places to Eric's. Slowly, I led him around, then back again. I twirled away, and he followed. Slowly, without talking, the dance evolved. I hadn't realised how much I'd missed dancing with another person, moving in harmony with them. It wasn't perfect, there was stumbling and misdirections, but it didn't have to be. I felt a part of my soul unclench, and happiness spread through me. Only as long as the dance, but that was enough. Once we'd finished, I looked at him, my eyes beaming, and said, "You can move beautifully." Then I remembered what the dance signified. "Will you be leaving now?" I saw the confusion in his eyes, the uncertainty. But before he could answer, the wizard spoke. I hadn't even realised that he was watching. "I've been thinking about it, and I'd like to show you how to convert a dwelling, to make it easier for you to move about. We could do up this tower so you could get upstairs. I think maybe a lift?" Malcolm spun in place and then shot forward, enfolding the other man in a tight hug. Over Malcolm's head I could see the question in the wizard's eyes. Would I stay too? And it was then that I put aside my revenge. We all stayed together for another 6 weeks. The wizard had said that it was to convert the lighthouse, and they did that. But it was just an excuse, and we all knew. He began teaching the boy his trade, and Malcolm took to it with ease and joy. I would still practice daily on my sword work, but only to make sure I didn't become rusty, not for any real purpose. The rest of the time I cooked and helped when needed. Then came the storm. A ship was due that night, and the wizard was up on the roof getting the lamp set up when a lightning bolt hit. The lamp exploded, and he was flung down the stairs. I managed to get to him, get him to bed, and then get Malcolm. He regained consciousness once, and begged us to fix the lamp. Then he sank back into a darkness I feared he would never rise from. I thought that it was a lost cause, but Malcolm wouldn't hear of it. Even though I had to carry him up the stairs, away from his wheelchair and into the wildness of the night, he didn't hesitate but got stuck in. We worked through the night, focusing on the same task, two beings joined together through will alone. It was like being with Eric again, only constructing instead of destroying. We managed to get it fixed just in time. The ship came safely into port, and the day was saved. A week later, a week filled with fixing and mending for all of us, and we were in the wizard's quarters. The ship's surgeon had nursed him back to health, and, though he was still a little shaky, he was almost back to his old self. He laid out his news quickly. The ship's mechanic had been impressed with the work that Malcolm had done, and offered him a job on the ship when it departed. Malcolm would be able to leave, to see the world in a way that he could never have dreamed of, to be free. And yet he hesitated. I don't know what held him back, but when he complained about not knowing anyone there, I found myself talking. "I could go with you," I said. Then I realised what I'd said, and added awkwardly, "if you want." He looked at me, broken in a way I didn't understand. Then he spoke his true fear, that he wouldn't be good enough. We laughed at that, the wizard and I. What else could we do? He'd been here mere months, but I felt like I'd seen him grow up, and that I'd grown up along with him. He'd accomplished so much, and he thought this was beyond him. After our laughter, we kindly told him what we thought of that. And so, together, the boy and I joined the crew of the skyship, the Emerald Queen. She was beautiful. The bottom of her hull was painted sky blue, the same colour as my hair, and the boy's wheelchair cushion. The name was painted in golden cursive near her prow, where a figurehead nested in the shape of an eagle. The sails were as green as her name, stretching out above and to the side of the deck. She was graceful, despite her size. We gathered our luggage, what there was of it. I only had my sword, the clothes I wore, and the wooden figurines Malcolm had carved for me. He had even less. We stood on the main deck amid the bustle and shouting, and, as we lifted off, I once again became disorientated. I thought I'd gotten past this, but everything was happening all at once, and it was overwhelming, and I just couldn't focus. I was being overwhelmed. I grasped for Malcolm's hand and clutched it tight. I thought he looked at me, probably confused, but he didn't pull away, only held on. I focused on that, and a beat I drummed into my leg with my other hand, and slowly I was able to clear the confusion. Together, we stepped down into the cabin while the ship took flight, leaving our old life behind. I hated the next few weeks. In the lighthouse, I had understood my place in the world. I had a routine and a job, but on the ship, I was surplus. There was nothing for me to do. I started with helping in the kitchen, but they already had a cook and he had an assistant and there was no place for me. My sword was taken away from me when I tried to practice with it on the deck. They claimed it was something about regulations and that I wasn't trained properly, but when I asked to be trained, they turned me away. I realised that they saw me as luggage, something that Malcolm had brought on board, and not a person in my own right. The boy kept me company, telling me about his day, and occasionally I would help in the engine room, but I had neither his skill nor his interest in the subject. I found myself spending more and more time in the hold by his hammock, turning my thoughts over and over in my mind. What was I? An emotional crutch for Malcolm? A doll that could sit in the corner and say things for someone else's amusement? Just another object? Was that all I was destined to be? I refused. I would just have to get off at the next port. Maybe go back to hunting down the men that had killed Eric. Malcolm would be fine. He made friends quickly, and he hadn't needed me along in the first place. He was just scared. I was brooding over these questions when the pirates attacked. They came in the middle of the night, in balloons that swam up from the inky depths of the sky. The watch was cut down, and then they swarmed down below decks. They were all gathered up, the crew, and herded into the hold where I was sitting. We were surrounded by gold-toothed grins and lusty swords. A part of me sniffed in derision at the state of them, but most of me was concerned for Malcolm, who was thrown to the ground from his hammock. I was unarmed. That amused me a little, an unarmed sword. As the pirates advanced on us, clearly ready to start killing any dissenters, I focused. My body was steel. I would be able to get through this. Then Malcolm thrust himself in front of me. "Get behind me, Serafina," he shouted. "I'll hold them off for as long as I can." I stared at the back of his head for the moment, marvelling at the ridiculousness of that statement. Hold them off? He'd barely last a second. A single cut from one of those substandard swords would end him. And yet, he was still trying to protect me. Why? Because, I realised, he valued me more than he valued himself, and he would defend what was important to him. I finally understood my purpose. I was a sword. I drew myself. It felt wrong, so terribly, terribly wrong. I was a sword and I was a body, and being two things at the same time was painful, and yet still I attacked. The years of practice came to my body self, allowing it to move fluidly, to slice, and my sword self knew exactly where it was supposed to go. I shattered the weak blades before me, casting the pirates back. They swung at me and I dodged, more nimble than Eric had ever been, more direct in my thrusts. 30 pirates came down into the hold. 15 made it out, and I was hot on their heels. But the longer I was drawn, the higher rose the pain, until I was acting more on instinct than anything else. My senses were beginning to go one by one, and I could feel my life force guttering. I don't know how many pirates escaped, scampering into their balloons and away into the night, but it wasn't many. And then I collapsed, sinking down into blackness in a mirror of those I'd just driven off. I came back lying in a hammock. I never slept, and so had no cause to lie in one before. It was a very strange sensation, and I would probably have remarked more on it, but Malcolm's face swam into view. He was sat on a high stool where he could watch over me, whittling something while he waited. I must have made a sound or movement because he abandoned his work and grabbed my hand. "Serafina," he cried, "are you okay?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. I've never known, not really. But right there, with his hand in mine, I thought I was. No moment could last forever though, and after some shouting and running out of sight, another face appeared, supported by a magnificent uniform and topped with a hat. It wasn't the captain, he hadn't survived the attack, but it was the first mate, now in command. "I'm sorry, Serafina," he said. "We misjudged you. We all thought that you were some project of the wizards, and..." He trailed off awkwardly, then held up a sword. It was mine, the one that they'd taken off me. "You saved us," he continued. "We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. I know that we have no right to ask this of you, considering how we discarded you up until now, but I'm asking if you will protect us again. take up the sword and join this crew properly? I was tempted to say no, just to spite him. That I wasn't just another tool. But everyone needs a purpose. And for the moment, this fitted me very well. I will, I told him, Malcolm's hand still in mine. And so, that was my job. I helped when needed, and when I wasn't, I walked the deck, practicing with my sword, dancing with Malcolm, and guarding the future. And usually, I did nothing. But not always. In a perfect world, a sword is very rarely drawn, but it always has the potential to be. Who am I? I'm still not sure. But for the moment, I'm happy going by Serafina.